Sonic Universe issue 76. So we start out seeing Mega Man's world a century into the future, where X is telling the hunters of corrupt robots to arm their weapons and sync with their navigators. So why does he have to outright tell them to do that? Isn't it obvious right away? I guess they're not allowed to do it until he says so. And he also has to tell Zero and Axel that they're with him. I can't believe there's no E in the name Axel. If that's always how it's been spelled, that's annoying. I remember watching Clement's Let's Plays of all the Mega Man X games, so I can't help but look forward to this because now I get to see more of Axel, meaning that it'll feel like a sequel to the X series. Better yet, it's a story arc that's not the Shattered World Crisis, so that's a great change of pace after a long arc that had no business not being over yet anyways. I'm sure if the arc had ended by now, the crossover's plot would have been exactly the same. Also, it's pretty lazy to just call Mega Man's world that. There's no reason it couldn't say Mega Man's world Earth. I assume that's what it's called. It's not the kind of text box that tries to pull you in to get you invested. And this page doesn't get you invested either because it starts out in the middle of the action. We see a bunch of lasers being fired in a snowy day in the city, with X saying that he'll stop Sigma here and now. I guess he's just deluding himself to feel better since they never permanently get rid of Sigma. All Sigma is, from my memories of Let's Plays and reviews, all he is a one-dimensional bad guy. So if you're brand new to the series, you're not going to miss out on anything if this page is your first time hearing about him. You will, however, be off-put and confused that in a comic called Sonic Universe, it starts out in not only Mega Man's universe, but also a completely different time period from the one in Worlds Collide. So Mega Man X has to deal with another generic one-dimensional bad guy, this time Vile from the X series. Generic evil rival character, who cares? He says it always feels so good to shoot X, but doesn't explain why, and I'm guessing he never will. It doesn't make sense to me because X fights bad guys, so you'd think anybody would be appreciative of that. Is Vile doing bad things that would cause X to constantly bother him first? Is that why he wants to kill him? He's so forgettable that I don't remember. So far, it looks like X could be fighting anybody evil for all the difference it'd make. You wouldn't need to know who Vile is. The text box calls him an ex-Maverick hunter, but doesn't explain why he quit, like from the stress of the job, and I doubt we'll ever get a good reason. I'm a Sonic fan, not a Mega Man fan. This story's lucky I'm even paying any attention to it instead of immediately skipping to the Sonic story, because so far this is as generic, boring, and lazy as you could get. Mega Man gets faced with bad guys who are evil for the sake of it. Where have I ever seen this before? Zero says that Vile gets mouthier every time Sigma resurrects him. I guess Sigma thinks Vile's really useful to him if he keeps giving him second chances. I guess Vile's either really glitchy or confusingly evil to even consider working for Sigma. It wouldn't be annoying me if Zero instead said that he gets mouthier every time Sigma resurrects him and reprograms him to be on his side. If he was only working for Sigma because he was basically brainwashed the whole time, and that's the case for every Maverick, that makes sense. Is he infected with the Maverick computer virus like all the rest that forces them to be monsters on Sigma's side? Probably, so he's evil for good reason, he just doesn't seem like it. I guess the Maverick virus is constantly being updated. So even if they did make antivirus that cured the Maverick virus, Sigma would just make an updated version of the Maverick virus. Zero tells X to go while Axel and him will protect him. X fortunately thanks him, and then we cut to deep inside the fortress, where we see Sigma as a floating head hologram since it's a digital virus. This reminded me of the Kinderborg computer, and best of all, Robotnik's digital avatar when he got back at the Dracon aliens. I like that better because he wasn't always an AI, he was just an avatar virus that Eggman controlled remotely, so it felt like a progression of his competence. But that's probably true for Sigma as well. He wasn't always like this. I just don't have the same attachment to him. But I'm sure he's a badass villain as well. I'm just really bored by the one-dimensional monster. At least him being a robot corrupted by a virus made by a vengeful scientist is a good excuse for his evilness. He can be written to be responsible for literally anything he can that's evil, and it's going to make sense. He says he'd hoped to scout out his destination a bit before making his move. And yet he's happy. There's no point in showing this panel. There's an explosion, and he says confusingly that Eggman has all but set things up for him by abusing the Zeti. Huh? The most basic rule of good storytelling is that you should start from the start, or else the audience will be confused and taken out of the story and frustrated. I guess this is supposed to be justified as it creates the mystery behind how in the world the Zeti could have been responsible for Sigma being so useful. I guess the Genesis portal conveniently showed up near them when it had no reason to even exist. But Sigma says all but, implying that Eggman didn't intentionally free Sigma in the hope that he'd go bother Sonic too. Well, that would bother him as well. Couldn't we just keep things simple and non-confusing and have this panel not be a thing? Eggman doesn't have to have anything to do with this. This is a separate universe. He has no reason to go bother it. Sigma's trying to destroy the city and people trying to go after evil robots, which obviously Eggman would prefer to have subdued and on his side. What good to him is a destroyed city? These two panels just slow things down and confuse you. I can't take X seriously when he says that Sigma's finally at an end. He just showed up, of course it isn't. This panel didn't need to exist either. Sigma says that his command of worlds is only beginning. I guess he's in favor of whatever's sadistic. I'm just confused because in X6, he caused an apocalypse wiping out most of humanity, meaning there would be less people for him to rule over. But I guess as long as he's able to rule in the first place, he doesn't care how many people it is. X6 and the destructiveness of the Mavericks makes it look to me like he cares more about mindless destruction than administrative duties and conquering. Whatever. Can the plot progress now? It's been several minutes. Did we really need to see the first 2 pages of the story? They didn't seem to be required to lead up to this. Sigma seems to teleport away, as you know a computer virus can do. And yet Mega Man X is surprised by this, going, what the? Can't we just be told right away why he's able to teleport? X seems like a really boring character in the story. Zero snarked a little bit, but both of them are basically just cops. You could actually replace them with cops, and the story would be the same. And then the next page cuts to Sonic in Green Hill Zone, just because it's the most iconic part of Sonic. Even though the last time we saw him, he was in Apatow. For a reason. He was trusted to go find the Sun and Moon keys. The text box even reminds him that his world was shattered. So him being here completely takes me out of it. Why isn't he taking this seriously? Wouldn't the guardian of the Apatow temple have the Sun and Moon keys for his temple on him and give them to him? Wouldn't it have made more sense if in the very next issue after we met him at latest, we saw Sonic use his keys and put the emerald in his temple? No, that makes sense. Why have Sonic focus on spending 5 measly seconds trying to repair the world? And of course, with the super speed, there's no way he shouldn't have put emeralds in a ton of temples already with the Gaigate portals and talking to the other guardians. We should have at least seen a text box here, or a text bubble, telling us that this takes place after he put every emerald he had in temples. Tails said that Sonic would find something out here, but since this has to be a deviation from the heroes' main mission, I don't see why Tails and Sonic would prioritize this over repairing the world. They already have a ton of emeralds. I have an idea. Since he's in a place he shouldn't be, why does this have to be the same Sonic from the reboot? Why can't this be an alternate universe Sonic? Penders is not the first writer in the universe to have the alternate universe counterparts idea, so there's no reason he should own that idea. And Flynn has used 7 concepts of Penders in the reboot without any consequences so far. Didn't someone say that the heroes were 6 for 7 emeralds? So Sonic would be finding the last one. But I thought that Eggman had one of the emeralds. I wouldn't be so full of questions and slowed down by them right now if I was told that this isn't a Sonic who's dealing with the Shattered World crisis, who would obviously have better things to do right now than go through a crossover for sales. Sonic's smug and annoys me by easily running downwards on a wall at a 90-degree angle, which didn't need to be written. And he finds a Master Emerald shard for Knuckles. This also didn't need to be written. There didn't need to be yet another needlessly dragged out arc. And then Sonic runs upwards on the wall above the lava. Well, I guess it did need to be written to explain why Knuckles is a part of the story, not on Angel Island. But we didn't need to have Knuckles be outside of Angel Island. Sonic wishes he could tell the difference between these shards and emeralds at long range, since he needs the emeralds. So he was sent here to get an emerald to fix the planet. Okay, but again, how is finding an extra emerald a higher priority than spending 3 seconds putting an emerald into a temple to fix the planet a little? I guess they're all worried Eggman would find it first if he doesn't hurry. So okay, but I'm still distracted by how forced it is that after all this time he hasn't activated a single Gaia temple. And since he gets out from where he was just fine, This really should have been written better. The Master Emerald chart could have been sitting in front of the crack, and we would have been able to see it to clue in Mega Man fans how his life is like, without us having to wonder how he could possibly run down a wall without falling. Outright lampshading that gravity is the thing that should be affecting him, and then somehow getting out of that situation himself. Oh, God forbid we see Bunny here to fly it down and get it herself. Bunny or Tails, either one could have worked. But it makes sense that he'd be sent here alone because he's fastest when not slowed down by other people, and he's wanted to get the ammo right away. I just wish they were here instead of Sonic. If all Sonic was going to do here is pick up one shard, that could have been 2 panels. Instead, he somehow stretched it out to 2 pages. I think Worlds Collide had a better beginning. I mean, the very beginning was a ton of worthless padding, but after that, it immediately started telling us how Wily and Eggman met, and was in chronological order, which is such a basic thing. But here it's a lot of padding. We could have just started out with one panel of Sigma teleporting away from X, and then cut to here. Sadly, it cuts back to Mega Man's world without warning, when I wanted to see Sonic instead. Sonic Universe, remember? You can't even do that right. Isn't it common sense to have most of the Mega Man content in the Mega Man comic? And if they wanted to get readers invested in Mega Man X's world this way, they were better off at least having text boxes in the pages quickly explaining that Sigma was an ex-Maverick hunter infected with an evilness virus. We cut to Mega Man's world in the present, but at least this is more interesting than the generic X world because we see Mega Man interacting with a Robot Master. It takes advantage of the fact that the Robot Masters in the first game weren't originally evil and would go back to being good once the game ended. So we see Mega Man and Eggman put their hands on something and give it some electricity, which gives Roll's house some power again. At least I assume it's just their house. I love Roll's hat. It's creative to do that when you don't have to. Cutman says that having Ice and Fireman tag teaming as the heating and cooling units have been funny. I don't see how. It's nice to have their powers be taken advantage of, but it would have been a bit better if we got to see it for one panel. So this page is actually enjoyable. I'm seeing something I never saw before. Mega Man's got actual friends beyond his immediate family members, and they've each got a useful power. Gutsman tells Mega Man that he and Concrete are almost finished the repairs on the east wing of the lab. Oh, that's useful of them. Then he says that they've run out of materials, so he wants Mega Man's help. I'm not going to say the man and their names anymore. It just takes too long, and it's impossible to respect names that sound so silly. Well, I don't know how faithful I'm going to say that resolution. I guess it depends on how long their names are. Roll tells Mega Man that he should take someone with him, even on a short drive. Well, he's humanized because we see his hair, making me wonder why he waited until now to take the helmet off. I don't know why Roll is worrying about him, though. If all the people did not have faith in to be able to survive any situation, why him? She's no better than Sally. Well, it's nice that we saw them hug. So for once they feel like actual brother and sister instead of Roll just standing around doing nothing all the time in the games. I get that she'd become a worrywart because of everything her brother's been through. He tells her that Wily is dead and the Emerald Spears all went to jail, so they'll be fine. I immediately doubted that they'd have the guts to actually keep Wily dead, since as the main villain of the series, he's gonna have the most impact out of any villain. And none of them will be seen as measuring up to him. They're all just gonna be seen as boring. And I've already been spoiled on the fact that Wily's a part of this crossover. I vividly remember reading one of the jokes used with his dialogue that got crap past the radar. Also, I like that Mega Man said that one time he got pulled over while driving because he looked like a kid. But wait a minute, look at what he's driving. Why would he ever get pulled over when it's so obvious that's going to be the iconic vehicle of Dr. Light? Who else could be driving? Wouldn't this giant vehicle look completely different from all the other cars on the road? And so everyone would assume it's owned by the resident scientist? There's some clumsy foreshadowing as he promises her he'll be fine. Gee, I wonder if he'll run into any trouble. That was obvious a while ago. And then we cut to Eggman on the Lost Hex, fortunately. And the narration shows us Eggman's diary. Why would he have a diary? Isn't it obvious someone like Sally would end up reading it and it'd be a valuable source of information? What an idiot. Anyways, the diary is just there to be a more natural, in-universe way to reiterate to us what he's been through recently. He's conquered the Lost Hex and enslaved the Deadly Six in an effort to get a new perspective on the Shattered World problem. What's that supposed to mean? Can't he just say to get an army? He has tons of armies already, doesn't he have faith in them? He should say reconquered if this is taking place after the game with him re-enslaving them. It's not like Sonic is on the Lost Hex. So, it's not like this is taking place during Lost World. Then the narration reveals that he had them build him a base. Not that we get to see that illustrated properly, because that'd look interesting. Then it's revealed that Orbot smashed his conch, so now they're free of his control. So he re-enslaved them. It's not exactly like Lost World. Why did he smash his conch? Oh, the text box says he's looking evil today. And then Eggman's narration explains that he found out it wasn't really Orbot, but Orbot infected by the Sigma virus. I guess it came to him from a convenient Genesis portal that exists for no good reason. We should have seen that. Did Eggman send Orbot through a Genesis portal? Did a Genesis portal open up below Orbot, and so he fell into it and got infected by the Sigma virus? And then he fell into another convenient portal that conveniently took him back to Eggman? At least that's faster pacing. But there's nothing more boring than a story structure like this, where everything's explained to you after the fact. That doesn't get you invested. But if you didn't even get to see him first get infected, then it doesn't feel as good and you can't take it as seriously. Sigma, who's possessed Orbot conveniently, tells Eggman that he studied him for some time. Oh, I guess through Orbot's eyes. But some time now is too vague. It makes me think of more time than just the time Orbot's been taken over. Which I don't even know how much time that is. Anyways, he wants Eggman to give him a new, more suitable body form. Possibly because he finds this body too short and humiliating. I have a question. Why did he make Orbot smash the conch? I guess to force Eggman to be reliant on him, because now he can't trust the Zeti to be useful and not turn on him. But for all he knew, this would immediately cause the Zeti to destroy him. Because if he just assumes the Zeti are a threat to Eggman, wouldn't they be a threat to him too? He's lucky that they didn't just immediately destroy Orbot. He made a stupid mistake and he just illogically got rewarded for it. I guess by this point I'm supposed to assume that the rumor Eggman's rebuilding his roboticizer was really just a rumor after all, with no fanfare. Because he could have roboticized the Zeti, taking advantage of the fact that this is Archie Eggman. But no. By the way, I'd rather the text box say Sonic's Universe than Sonic's World. Because aside from the obvious, this is the Lost Hex, a separate planet from Mobius. I'm glad Orbot smashed the conch for a good logical reason instead of him smashing it for no reason, like being clumsy. At least I'm assuming it's a good logical reason, because he's not saying why he did it. Either way though, the conch being smashed so quickly feels like a kick in the face to Eggman. Eggman explains in the narration that he had worked many long, grueling hours to build the robot body for him himself. So he's glad that usually he doesn't have to do the building, despite being Eggman. Now he suddenly finds his main gimmick of engineering to be tedious and doesn't want to do it? This is relatable, but who is he then? I thought he loved engineering. I guess it makes sense that Sigma only trusts Eggman himself to build it, and he can't just tell someone else somewhere else to build it for him. And this is faster. I'm just wondering why the Zeti didn't immediately leave Eggman. Because they immediately left Eggman Lost World. I like that Eggman would like to steal the superior technology of Sigma's world. But how in the world could Sigma have grabbed some command of the Genesis portals? They're just randomly occurring portals to other universes in time. How can you command that? Is there anything he can't do? Shouldn't a story start at the beginning? So we should learn how he grabbed command of them immediately. I like the subtle indicator that he hates how short Orbot's body is because he has Zavok holding him. So how did he get into Orbot's head anyways? How does he still exist? That just feels arbitrary. It's not like we saw someone put a USB drive into Orbot. We didn't see a Maverick hop through a portal and insert the drive into Orbot. It just happened for no reason. Just to make him part of the plot. It's not like Eggman accidentally warped himself to Sigma. That would have made a bit more sense. It makes sense that because he's egotistical, he'd want to tower over Eggman. I like that Eggman said it's nice to be appreciated. Sigma didn't have to praise him. I thought he just did as much evil as possible for the evils. Why would he ever tell him he did excellent work, even when in a good mood, instead of just insulting him every chance he gets? If he's as evil as possible, does evil things for the sake of it. He's making Eggman work for him as a slave out of intimidation, so he doesn't need to flatter him. I guess Eggman just said there's no way he'd build all that for him out of force of habit, because he's like that with everyone. But how can he even know what he's been shown? Those are just orange screens. They tell you nothing. And you'd think those screens would have proper variation in color at this point. I'm so confused. Why did he bother building a robot body for Sigma? If this was Archie Robotnik, he would have just shot him to death with the laser that could fire out of his robot arm. Zavik grabs his shoulder, which causes Eggman to be more careful in antagonizing Sigma, as apparently Zavik takes Sigma more seriously. I have a question. The Zeti are able to control robots like electromages whenever they want, yes? Why don't any of them control Sigma? Why are they willingly subjugating themselves and working for him? I just realized. We still aren't being told that the Zeti have all been brainwashed into loyalty to Sigma. That's why they're all being silent, boring, personality-less. Which I was assuming was because they're so resentful of Eggman and were holding their tongues, waiting for the right time to all strike at once. But that'd be out of character of the crazy purple one. My point is, this is like if the Iron Queen agreed to work for a robot. Did Eggman forget? I just called Flynn Eggman. Did Flynn forget that they could control robots? Eggman says that there's no way he could build all of that without help, because he's tired and his designs are so advanced. I have a question. Sigma said he's no builder, right? Well, he's an AI. Can't he just download everything there is to know about engineering into his brain? Well, I guess because his brain is like a person, he'd have to personally memorize the information by reading it and doing stuff with that information so that he'd be able to remember it and use it. But you think it'd be possible for him to reprogram his own brain so that he could know just as much about engineering as Eggman or Dr. Light? If he's an AI, he wouldn't have any human brain limitations. I'm talking even before he met Eggman. Why didn't he make himself an engineering genius a lot earlier so he could build his own robots and robot body? Like Wily could, so he's more competent than Sigma. Why isn't he embarrassed that he has to constantly request help and rely on others, instead of having total independence? Eggman's really confident. Why would he ever think that it's worth helping Sigma in any way? Why would he think that Sigma would be such a useful ally that's worth going out of his way to build a robot body for him? Instead of him just immediately sicking the Zeti on Orbot. Or if the Zeti arbitrarily won't attack Orbot when he's possessed by Sigma for no reason. Couldn't Eggman have just ran away? Eggman thinks he'll need an accomplice and decoy to get out of this mess. Sigma says that he knows just the man to help Eggman, and out of complete nowhere, he magically summons Wily, who yells for help, implying he was just kidnapped by him. I don't understand. Is he like Nicole now? The fact that Wily being brought back from the dead this way, through some portal ring above Sigma's glove, isn't explained right away, is just annoying. Why confuse the audience? We didn't need to be told that Wily was dead. It shouldn't have even been written if he was going to come back anyways, because it's just pointless and tricks people. If this meeting between Wily and Eggman does have a proper explanation, then that'll be a lot better than Worlds Collide, where Eggman contacted Wily by accident when trying to contact his sub-bosses, when Wily was in another universe, just because Wily was holding a Chaos Emerald that shouldn't have been there. Like, at that point, why doesn't he contact the Freedom Fighters by accident when they're holding a Chaos Emerald when they're in front of their Technolo tree? So he was summoned through a Genesis portal. I'm still not being told how he can summon Genesis portals, though. I'm still not being told how he knew exactly where Wily was so he could summon him to Eggman. So it still feels arbitrary. At least portals being used in the story looks on the surface like a more natural and easily understandable justification for a crossover starting than Worlds Collide. But nothing would beat Eggman intentionally going to another universe where Sonic can't bother him, and it just happens to be Wily's world. That'd keep things simple and make sense right away. And Eggman mentions the fates in the narration, the second time they've been mentioned in the reboot, and yet they aren't properly capitalized like literally anyone else would do, when the narration is actually in proper capitalization most of the time, out of nowhere. Wily confuses me even more because he doesn't know who Eggman and Sigma are. Sigma says that Wily needs to get his bearings and says to send them both to a prison egg, as tomorrow they'll work. As even he's gonna let Eggman have some rest when Wily clearly doesn't need rest. Why wouldn't Wily be put to work immediately, like I naturally assumed? It sure was generous of Sigma to actually listen to Eggman when he said he was exhausted. But it's smart of him to know that if he overworks anybody, there'd be consequences. Wait, I thought they were gonna get thrown into prison eggs. This is an animal capsule. This is written by a Sonic fan. He's the last person you'd expect to call them by the wrong name. I don't even think animal capsules look like eggs. They aren't completely white, and they've got that yellow thing on top. But I do like the revelation that they can get thrown into them because there's part of their wall that goes down. It finally explains how the animals get into them. And Zavik sarcastically says to them, "Your room, gentlemen." Well, that's some personality. Wily's confused reaction to being told Eggman doesn't like him implies that he doesn't remember Eggman because that's the nature of how his universe got affected by the Super Genesis wave. So why does Eggman still remember Wily and Mega Man? It can make sense because he could have written everything he knew about the crossover and preview in a journal. After all, he has a data log. I just wish we were told that he remembered Worlds Collide because he wrote his memories of it down. That'd be one sentence, instead of making it look like he's being shown favoritism by keeping memories he shouldn't keep. If they're even able to fade away at all, when that makes no sense, it'd be like forgetting everything about a TV show you started. He'd have to constantly refresh his memory looking at the journal to remember them, which would require sufficient motivation. So Eggman tells Wily he has a plan that'll get them out of this and spite their enemies, and Eggman thinks it's mundane and insulting that he's turning his Badnik assembly line to a mechaniloid factory. I can barely even spell and pronounce that. Why not call them robots? Is that too simple? If that's loyal to the game, well, he shouldn't be. Nobody would bother with that word. Ooh, I like that the Deadly Six will get armor that'll enhance their abilities. It looks black, so that's badass. At least we'll get to see the Zeti in different outfits for once, even if it's not their iconic appearance. I didn't even know any of them beyond Zavik survived Lost World. Things must have happened differently in the reboot. Anyway, it's smart of Sigma to demand armor like that to be made, just in case they need it. Sigma's also built a trap into the armors, so Eggman thinks that the treacherous Zeti will get what they deserve as far as he's concerned. So the armors are even smarter because they have a bomb in them that'll blow up if they betray Sigma. I'm assuming they don't know about it, otherwise they'd take it off. So this is new. Eggman doesn't even need cybernetics or nanite bombs to force Mobians to work for him. He could give them armor that he says would make them more powerful, and then make it have a bomb in it, or shock them whenever he wants. The problem is, it'd only be able to be used against them that way once, and then the rest of them would take the armor off and not wear it. And they could take it off without being seen by him and run away. They can't be forced to wear the armor all the time because everyone needs a bath eventually. But I guess Eggman wouldn't care about their health. Maybe they'd be under constant supervision with people and robots and cameras. But at that point, it'd be so much less cumbersome to just put the bomb in their bodies, like in a cybernetic limb. Sigma can make each Zeti have robot hands with the anti-betrayal trap in it. That'd be so much smarter because they wouldn't be able to just take it off without serious consequences. And it could be programmed to blow up if it detaches from them. So, is everybody always kept lit by spotlights programmed to follow them in the dark base with motion sensors? I know the Zeti are around, but it still looks too lazy to have a base be mostly just a black void around them with only the characters being lit up. How do they see where they're going and not bump into and trip on things while they're working? That's so inconvenient. He wouldn't design a base like that. It could be a base that has black walls and so on. Eggman thinks he'll need Sonic and Mega Man to out Sigma, and to keep them out of their way, they'll need to appeal to Sigma's corruption-happy side. So he's hoping Sigma will corrupt Mega Man. If that's possible, what's taken so long? Why doesn't Sigma, in a robot body, just go right up to Mega Man and punch him, and send the virus into him? Can he not do that? Can he sneak up behind him? That'd be 2 seconds. Can he do that whenever he wants, and that's how so many Mavericks exist? If a bad guy has a virus the whole time that he can transmit to anybody, that's pretty overpowered. Like, no better than zombies. Couldn't Sigma, for example, have a crossbow with an arrow in it that contains the computer virus and shoot it? Well, it's not an actual virus, I guess not. It's not like it's in their oil blood, right? Just their brain. So I'm not sure how it can spread if it's way more limited than a real sickness. Based on my memory of X6, it can literally be in the air and your character can get affected by it. So never mind. Why wouldn't that be the case from the start? How incompetent was Sigma? Why wouldn't every boss fight robot have Maverick virus gas emitting from them all the time? If it's even able to spread, the heroes are lucky they've never been turned by it. Good thing they can attack from a distance all the time, except for Zero. He has to fight at close range. Because him using a ray gun would be too smart of him. But he's magically enhanced by the virus that makes him evil instead of simply being turned evil again, like would make sense. Because I guess his antivirus system recognizes it now and made robot antibodies that can reprogram the virus to enhance him. Wait, why doesn't anyone think to use his robot antibodies and study them and reprogram every robot to be immune to the Maverick virus? They can make a vaccine from zero! What idiots! This is like if someone was immune to zombieism in a zombie show and everyone assumed only she could ever be like that. Finally, Zavik points out that the Zeti can control machines. And he says that he can even control Sigma. But instead of just immediately controlling him, or better yet, controlling him and then saying all that, which he could do just as well and someone smart as him would do, he breaks before doing it. Oh, so that's going to be where the trap will come in, right? Sigma will threaten them into not simply controlling him? But I don't see how that'll matter. All any of the Zeti have to do is blink and he'd be their slave before he could ever try to use the trap against them. They don't have to sit there and listen to him threaten them. I really hate talking as a free action. It's the most insulting fiction-y trope that just reminds you that you're experiencing fiction. Sigma says that he's a superior robot, and while they may control his body, nothing can control his will. Bullshit! Is this supposed to explain that they can't control free-willed robots? I always assumed they didn't control Orbot and Cubot because they're just little servant robots. But he took control of Orbot, and Orbot has free will. It's not the same as a Zeti controlling Orbot, but still, Sigma can control Orbot. His free will wasn't too powerful for that. If they're outright electromages, obviously nothing would stop them from controlling anybody. Didn't the Iron Queen control the free will Dark Legionnaires by simply having electronic chips in them? And Landa made sure she would keep her free will no matter what? The Zeti are essentially the Iron Queen, but it's too late for them to plan to do that to Sigma now. Still, his whole brain would be mechanical. Couldn't they just control his brain? Send what's basically a virus into it to control it? Because they can make any part of that machine into a brainwashing chip. They should be able to reprogram anything. Don't give me that, oh, he's too cool and badass to be brainwashed magically logic. That kind of childish logic is the same reason why Sonic was immune to brainwashing twice in Fleetway. It's just as ridiculous. He was put in a badnik, and somehow he wasn't brainwashed. Then out of complete nowhere, it turns out that the armor can control their will. It's not a bomb, or a shocking device. Well, this is much smarter of him. But now I have to wonder why the fuck they weren't brainwashed the instant they put the armor on. And I'm angry now because he convoluted the story with a bullshit Deus Ex Machina for Sigma. They would have been able to control any machine. Sigma can be controlled by the Zeti. It's fine. There's nothing to be afraid of. For fuck's sake. That would have been new. How can I keep liking a plot when it takes me out of it that the writer's just forcing it to go how he wants? I was invested in taking it seriously. But then this happened. Also, I guess them being brainwashed is supposed to justify them never having personalities. That would suck. They could be roboticized, and maybe they'd look cooler then. Them simply being roboticized would be a lot less convoluted and confusing than this because they could be roboticized before they'd even get the chance to try to control Sigma. Why didn't Eggman just immediately roboticize them? Eggman and Wily are told to get to work making the Unity engines because Sigma wants to take over their worlds. And I still find it arbitrary and forced that Sigma's even here. Why does he have to be here? We really should have been shown how he got to Orbot. It makes sense. Meta-wise, it makes sense that the secondary big bad of Mega Man would show up in this crossover. But it needs to be justified in a way that doesn't feel tacked on, explained after the fact. Eggman and Wily warned Sigma about Mega Man and Sonic, revealing that Sigma spied on Mobius. And surprisingly, without taking offense to the implication they might have a lot of trouble with them, he asked them for a suggestion on how to deal with them. Well, that makes sense after all of his experience with X. Of course you know better than to underestimate big heroes like that. Plus, he's lost Sex so many times, it's smart of him to give someone else's plan than his own a shot for a change. So it suggested to him that he should use the Zeti to ambush Sonic. Probably the same plan Sigma would have tried. I didn't know Zavik could punch the ground and send Sonic upwards from a shockwave before he could attack him. Well, I've never played Lost World, and I didn't exactly have my eyes glued to the screen most of the time when experiencing any commentaries over it. So I won't know if the Zetis will have brand new magical powers or not, but still, their powers are impressive. Logically, Zavik would just keep hitting the ground so Sonic would be unable to have a chance to go back to standing and attack them all. If he can't even jump, he won't be able to home attack them all, let alone run around them or away from them. So Zavik would just keep hitting the ground, and while Sonic is in the air from one of the times he hit the ground, Zeti would catch him and smack him and knock him out. So it makes sense that he got captured then, if that's all that happened. There better be an explanation for how he can control and summon portals. It would have made sense if we were told that he's taking control of Silver, the only one we've seen with the ability to do anything with portals. We see Mega Man get ambushed by the Zeti, as it suggested to Sigma that he can make Mega Man and Sonic his minions as well. That's smart. I guess because they would have armor that would magically brainwash them too. Yeah, robotization makes more sense. It's not explained how chest armor can brainwash people. So at that point, well, sure it's not explained how you can roboticize someone either. I've always hated that it wasn't clearly established to be a magical artifact or gem that did it. It's so much easier to understand that when someone's brain is roboticized, of course it could be reprogrammed to be loyal to you at the same time because now it's just a machine. Or if something else will happen to Sonic, we'll have to wonder why it won't happen to the Zeti too, on top of them having that armor, because again, you can't always wear armor. You'll get dirty and start overheating. Sigma brags out loud to X when he's not there, that with this engine, the power of 2 worlds will be delivered directly to him. Wait, power? As in, what, geothermal energy? All of their life energy? Dark Gaia energy? I guess so. That's surprising and overpowered. Suddenly a bad guy can just power up with the energy of 2 entire planets now. That came out of nowhere. Eggman really can invent anything. Just like I remember learning about, it's gonna turn out that Sonic will be roboticized, as we end the story seeing Sonic in a roboticizer. At least I assume that's what it's supposed to be, because Eggman says they'll be turned into something. It's just confusing because, one, they're in what looks like rip-offs of Wisp capsules. It does have more charm than them not looking like familiar imagery. They were putting things that looked like this at the end of Worlds Collide, weren't they? And they were immediately roboticized back then, so why? These don't look like roboticizers. They're standing upright. And 2, it's convoluted that they're being restrained by energy rings that somehow hold them above the air a little bit, instead of them simply being tied up and lying on the floor. But I guess if Sonic's put in an anti-gravity field, he won't be able to spin dash out. And he's surrounded by non-physical barriers instead of something he could bullshit vibrate out of at Sonic speed. Or vibrate enough that they melt from the friction and somehow not burn him from contact afterwards. Instead it's energy rings, so he'd get electrocuted if he moved. This story was by Ian Flynn. At least it took until nearly the ending to piss me off. It went from a few pages of boring filler to actually interesting and enjoyable because I got to see Mega Man's former enemies from the first game actually being his allies. The actual plot finally starts when we learn after the fact that Sigma possessed Orbot and ordered Eggman to build a robot body for him for no reason so he could conquer both planets. It feels irritating and arbitrary because I'm not shown when he possessed Orbot. And I don't know why Eggman thinks he would need Sigma's help, because wouldn't he think he's so awesome that he would just laser Orbot to death and not bother with Sigma? Why would he be afraid of Orbot? I prefer to think that the Super Genesis wave made the barriers between zones stronger, not weaker, which would cause these convenient portals to start showing up just to force the crossover. Why aren't portals to the Soul Dimension showing up? So Sigma meeting Eggman feels arbitrary, like it could have easily not happened. But I respect Sigma more than Eggman, who's been a buffoon sometimes. So Eggman being his slave feels right. They shouldn't have established that Wily's dead and not explain why the hell Sigma is able to create a purple light and then magically teleport Wily to him. It's not like he knows where Wily lives. He's in hiding. That looked like he just created a ball of purple light over him and then ripped him out of cyberspace. But no, Wily being a solid hologram after digitizing himself would be too interesting and properly explain how he could have died and still been here. It would have taken advantage of the fact that he's a scientist. He really should have written Sigma to say that he summoned Wily here by creating a Genesis portal. Even then, I'm not told how he can control portals when he's not Silver. And we weren't shown that Silver got roboticized or put brainwashing armor on after going through that portal. So this feels forced just to have a story. I'm hoping this is an intentional mystery that's going to get explained. Wouldn't it be more interesting if we saw an evil counterpart of Silver, and he was working for Sigma? How can armor brainwash people anyways? It really would have been better if the Zeti were roboticized. That also has no explanation, but at least it keeps it simple and easy to understand. It's completely bullshit that the Zeti can't simply control Sigma. He's a machine, and they can control machines. This is like if the Iron Queen could never control Nicole because she has free will. And guess what? She did control Nicole. So no wonder I thought this was stupid right away. It completely contradicts a rule established earlier. It's just all the more proof that this isn't canon to Archie Sonic. Why would the Super Genesis Wave change this? I get the meta logic reason for this happening. The Zeti are really unpopular with the fans, while Sigma isn't as hated, so Sigma wins over them. I guess he thought he couldn't have the Zeti control him because of that dumb meta logic. But it's stupid to just care about meta logic and only think in that. You need to have the plot make actual sense too. So it pissed me off because it abandoned all logic and that just tore me out of the story when I was actually invested in it earlier. I'd rather the story be logical than the Zeti get spited. It's not like they got slapstick, which might be satisfying instead of this. I don't care more about the unpopular characters getting karma than I do about one of the most important requirements for any story. The plot progression making sense. It's not like the issue is full of creativity. I've seen almost all of this before. I've even seen the Robot Masters be good guys before because I've seen Mega Man powered up. Sigma enslaving Eggman to Zeti is the only thing new here. And it's not even something that seems like it'd take a lot of thought and time to think up. Main bad guy enslaves other bad guys. Ooh, that was hard. I could come up with that. How about Ixis enslaves Bowser? So if the story doesn't have any creativity impressing me, there's no smoke and mirrors to distract me and make me forgive the plot holes. The other half will make the story good is its logic, and all my attention is on the logic now, so it has to make sense. And the logic fell apart the minute the Zeti got brainwashed. Electromage versus robot. The robot's not gonna win! How stupid does he think we are? At least the in-universe explanation for them losing is that they could never control his will in the first place, and it's not like they could control him but spent too much time talking first and got interrupted. That'd be enraging. But still, it gets convoluted again because Zavik could control his body, so why not his mind too? At that point, don't even have the Zeti in the same room as Sigma. That was so obviously a bad idea. If it was never written that the Zeti were ever in the same room as Sigma, and it was made impossible for them to be in the same room as Sigma throughout the entire crossover, then we would have avoided this plot hole. The Zeti didn't even need to be a part of the crossover. It's frustrating. I did enjoy some of the story. It's intriguing to see Eggman have to work for Sigma and the Zeti. That alone made the story interesting and easy for me to push through at that point. Wily contributes nothing unique to the plot, so he could not exist. He seems like a completely worthless part of the crossover. Aside from the fact that he gives Eggman someone to relate to and he says that he knows his heart's not into having to build stuff for someone else to conquer with. But the problem is, Eggman starts out still hating Wily from the crossover. So, is their friendship that was the highlight of Collide gonna come back or not? If it doesn't come back, that'll be depressing. It'll defeat the whole purpose of him coming back. The plot would have made more sense if Zavik didn't even get the chance to try to control Sigma first. The Zeti should have simply been knocked out and roboticized. Like, immediately. That would justify their behavior afterwards properly. And they're already wearing new outfits, so it's not like they're afraid to change their designs anyways. They have glowing eyes because they're brainwashed. Couldn't that be because they're robots instead? All they really have to change to make them have a roboticized design is make them look like they have a metallic texture, but they could still have the same exact coloration and shape. Oh yeah, Sonic and Mega Man get made their minions. It's totally justified because Zavik could have just kept slamming the ground and sending Sonic upwards. So Sonic was unable to do anything to defend himself. And so eventually one of the Zeti would run up to him and catch him and knock him out. And Mega Man was completely outnumbered. Still, we should have been shown him getting knocked out, because he could still shoot at them whenever he wanted until that point. So basically, aside from a couple of the beginning pages being worthless, this story was pretty alright. Good even. Until the Zeti got brainwashed, where the writing completely fell apart and pissed me off enough to rant for several paragraphs. They didn't have to be in Eggman's base at that point. They could have been sent out to do missions for him at that point, like capturing animals. At least it took until basically the end of the story for me to get pissed off. That's better than Worlds Collide, where I was infuriated by its plot holes right from the start. The plot is just that Sigma makes Eggman and Wily build stuff for him. That's pretty basic for over 20 pages. And the issue could have easily fit some of the story from next issue in it if it didn't waste pages at the start with cheap padding instead of just skipping to Eggman's part of the plot right away. How did the Zeti not just instantly try to control Sigma the second they saw him, long before he put that armor on him? They didn't have a reason to think he'd have ordered enhancing armor for them to be made before he even got the chance to talk in Orbot's body. All they knew was that he wanted to use him as lackeys just like Eggman. They just control him when he was an Orbot and immediately kill him. And obviously they would all just dogpile him and kill him. The entire crossover never would have happened. If Eggman was smart, he would have had a ray gun with him and just shot Orbot. It didn't even need the Zeti to be there with their Storybreaker power. They've got cool powers to hype me up, so I'm glad they're here. But they broke the story here. Nobody would think that Sigma would have a chance against the Zeti. Somehow Sigma doesn't get control when he's up against 6 Electro Mages at once. You'd think they'd all combine their powers against him, since we know that multiple people playing the Mystic Melody can make it more powerful. So how can that not apply to other magic? Not to mention they had armor that enhanced their power at that point. Not only could they combine their power to control something that'd be 6 times harder to control than a regular robot, but they were literally at their most powerful at that point.